the channel. So this is the Desert Spring. You found yourself here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you want to be a part of the channel, please, desertspring111@gmail.com. I would love for you to reach out. I'd love to have an interview with you. We want to talk about deconstruction stories, walking away from Christianity, any sort of stuff that you've experienced in Christianity. If there's anything negative you experienced in Christianity, anything that you have a crazy story, please, we want to hear it. Or if you know a person who has had a crazy story and they are willing to come online and share their story, please, I'd love to have a chat with them. So once again, the email's right there, desertspring111@gmail.com. And today we're going to be watching a video of Jesus versus the church. What Jesus would say to modern church. It's not what you think. All right. So this guy, he has, well, I won't do too much of an introduction for him. You can look at his channel if you'd like, The Recovering Catholic. And I do like his content. As you can see, I was subscribed to his content. I do like his content. He puts out pretty cool stuff sometimes. Some of the stuff I agree with, some of the stuff I don't agree with, but this is what we're going to look at. Jesus versus the church. He also tends to go into a lot of Gnostic texts. If you don't know what Gnostic texts are, here, let me do this. That way you can actually see me. If you don't know what Gnostic texts are, this is the Nag Hammadi, okay? They dug this out of the ground in Egypt back in the 1940s, and it's basically all the books that was inside. All of these books dated around the time that the Bible itself was written. One of the books inside of here is the Book of Thomas, that is claimed to be written by Thomas, the apostle of Jesus. And the Book of Thomas is nothing but direct quotes from Jesus. And what Jesus's direct quotes are in the Book of Thomas do not align with what's in Scripture. Well, they do align with what Jesus taught in Scripture, but they don't align with what Christianity teaches about Jesus in Scripture. So keep that as an idea. There is a very distinct separation between what Jesus taught and what Paul teaches. I may make a video about that. I tend not to like to make videos just because the amount of editing that I have to do is insane, and I don't have that kind of time. The last time I tried to make a video, it took like 6 days of editing. So if you'd like to support the channel, that would be great, because then I could just hire an editor and I wouldn't have to spend the entire week editing a single video. So anyways, let's get back to this.
Most Christians worship Jesus, but they ignore what he taught. Hey guys, it's John sitting here in the studio. Hope you're having a fabulous day drinking my mug of coffee. I do hope that you are having a fabulous day wherever you are. There's a schism between the church and Jeshua's teachings. And yes, I say Jeshua, not Jesus. And there's a reason for that, which I'll explain in another video. Jeshua taught inner transformation. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Greater works than I have done you will do. Take heart, I have overcome the world.
I'll stop him right there. Very quickly, in the Book of Thomas, that's very much what you see in Scripture in the actual Bible is to suffer not the little children to come unto me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What you see in the Book of Thomas is if you say that the kingdom of heaven is in the air, then the birds will precede you. If you say that the kingdom of heaven is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Here's something I say, that the king of heaven, should I pull it up? I could. Essentially, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you and it is outside of you. And as long as you don't know that, you'll be impoverished. Okay, here we go. I have it right here. I'll just read it instead of trying to butcher it. How about that? Blind person is Jesus. Wow. Okay. Jesus said, if your leader says to you, look, the kingdom of, okay. Sorry, guys. I'm struggling today. Okay. Jesus said, if your leaders say to you, look, the kingdom is in heaven, then the birds of heaven will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside you and it is outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you dwell in poverty and you are poor. And that is basically the end of that one, because it's just a bunch of random quotes. So the next verse is something that is completely off topic. And the fact that it is off topic, there's no storyline to it, it is direct quotes, and it doesn't follow what Christianity is trying to teach, is the reason why it's not accepted by Christianity in general. But Jesus did teach the idea that the kingdom of heaven is something that you can experience today. It's not something that has to be pushed off till tomorrow, right? There's another book called The Secret Life of Jesus Christ. And it's teachings of Jesus kind of from the Middle East, and not teachings from Jesus from the Middle East. What it is there's stories, accounts of a person who came from Israel, went over to the Middle East, and he basically did everything that you would expect Jesus to do. He went, studied in their temples, studied their things, found issues with their religion, started, calling out the BS in all of the religions at the time at the places that he was at. And he basically ran from town to town to town, being chased around with pitchforks, because every single time he saw an injustice, he would call it out, he would scream it out, and everybody doesn't like it. In general, people don't like when people do that, right? Just like we can see, well, we're not going to go there. But in that book, he states that turning from your wicked ways in salvation is not what you think. Salvation is returning to your childlike pure self, which is why you can see in the Bible he would say, suffer not to the little children to come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, which is why he would say in the book of Thomas that the kingdom of heaven is inside of you and outside of you, but you basically have to wake up to that fact, right? How can the kingdom of heaven be inside of you and outside of you? Well, potentially, because the kingdom of heaven is already in everything, you just have to open your eyes to it, right? Morg Official is a great one. He goes into a lot of the Gnostic texts and a lot of those things, but we're not going to focus on that right now. We'll get back to this video.
Literally is telling you that you have the ability to step up and be more. Ye are gods. But the church teaches to be compliant and fearful, and they're using guilt-based morality to keep you there. Modern religion became the opposite of the liberation that Jeshua himself spoke of, the power within you that Jeshua spoke of. He confronted power structures. Oh, woe to you, teachers of the law. He exposed performative holiness. People, don't stand on a street corner and announce your holiness. To go within your closet, go within your, within. Kept telling you to come back to yourself, come back to within you. Don't worry about what other people think of you, because that's just vanity. It's a vanity exercise. And it's hoping for validation or approval that you are so holy. He restored dignity to the rejected. He ate with the beggars. He healed the lepers. He literally was healing the Roman soldier's servant. He literally treated love as law, not the rules and doctrines and dogmas of the church. I leave you one commandment, love one another. To leave you the one commandment of loving one another lets the laws go. He says, before Abraham was, I am. Well, Abraham is a direct representation of the Jewish faith.
He also calls God, the Old Testament, basically the devil, whenever he's talking to the Pharisees in John 8:44. He basically says, people who read that, they don't see what just happened, because you're in a church. When you read that thing, you're in a church. So you're being taught that Jesus is attacking the Pharisees. No, Jesus is telling the Pharisees that they're worshiping the devil and that they're worshiping a ruthless murderer. Who were the Pharisees worshiping, if not Yahweh, right? So there's a little nugget there, potentially, that Jesus was saying, no, you don't know where I'm from, because that's what he says in there. Just really quick, I guess we can turn over to that and just read a little bit of it. But basically, further on down, he says, you don't know where I am. You don't know where I come from. Why would you think that you knew me, kind of thing. So, starting at verse 42, Jesus said unto them, If God were your Father, ye would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do ye not understand my speech? Even because ye cannot hear my word. Ye are of your father, the devil. He's speaking to the Pharisees now. And the Pharisees' father is who but Yahweh? Okay. Ye are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of the father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth. Yeah, you can look at the God of the Old Testament and say, yeah, he didn't abide by the truth. He didn't abide by his own 10 commandments. And he also killed absolutely everybody that pissed him off, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own. He speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, ye believe me not, which you conceiveth me of sin, and I say the truth. Why do ye not believe me? He that is of God heareth God's words. Ye therefore hear them not, because ye are not of God. Think about that. Then answered the Jude and said unto him, Say thou art a Samaritan, thou hast devil. Jesus answered, I have not a devil, but I honor my Father, and ye do this, dishonor me. I seek not my own glory. Thou seekest verily, verily, I say to you, if a man keepeth his saying, he shall never see the... Okay, but the whole point is, there is a little nugget that Jesus is saying, you guys aren't even following the right guy. Now, that would make sense if the Old Testament God and the New Testament God were dramatically different people. Are they? You know the answer to that because we're all taught the answer to that. What happened between the Old Testament and the New Testament? Take out Paul, because Paul supposedly explains all the craziness and how. Take out Paul from it. Why is it that the Old Testament God is this fiery, crazy, jealous dude who's perched up on a throne, who's always pissed off at everybody, and Jesus comes and says, "No, you don't know who I'm coming from. You don't know my Father. Your father's the devil, and he kills everybody, and he lies, and he murders." Right? Think about that. And so there's clearly a disconnect between, and so what? So then all of a sudden Jesus, we get the idea of the Trinity from Paul, because that didn't come from Jesus, right? We did a video, I don't want to card it in this. You can go back on my channel and look for it. Basically, there's a video where a pastor is showing the entire congregation everything that we get from Paul, and the idea of the Trinity is one of the things that we get from Paul, that Jesus said that I and the Father are one, right? So think about it. He and the Father are one. Jesus also says that if you didn't do it for the least of these, you didn't do it for me, right? So Jesus was clearly teaching this idea that in some way we're all connected, right? Whether you agree to that or not doesn't bother me. But yeah, let's get back into this.
Faith. He's saying before religion, what were you teachers of the law? He's saying before religion was I am, just being. And what he actually taught targeted hypocrites, telling them that they shouldn't be teaching that way. He targeted people judging others. He targeted spiritual hierarchy and exclusion. He railed against fear-based religion. So if he would come back today, what would he call out?
I will. What's going on? I will call that out just a little bit. I don't necessarily think that Jesus came back for everybody. The reason why is because Paul was the one who is attributed on taking Christianity to the Gentiles, right? But then at the same time, you have Jesus with the Samaritan woman. So maybe yes, maybe no. But in general, Christianity was not seen as something that was for the Gentiles in general until Paul came along. And so, maybe Jesus has his faults too. Personally, I think Jesus has his faults because look at what he did in the temple when he got pissed off. Right. And then he also just killed a fig tree because the fig wasn't producing any fruit. So that's his MO. He just walks around, hey, you're not bearing any fruit, be dead. Like that's kind of mean. I wouldn't do that.
He shouldn't be teaching that way. He targeted people judging others. He targeted spiritual hierarchy and exclusion. He railed against fear-based religion. So if he would come back today, what would he call out? What would be the thing that he would rail against very quickly? he definitely would rail against the fear of hell. And he would see it as a manipulation taught by the teachers of the law, because the construct of hell did not exist in the time of Joshua. It did not exist. It has nothing to do with anything he said, even in their Bible. It has everything to do.
Aaron Abke, I want to say also in his channel, he goes down into it a little bit, but Aaron Abke is another person who kind of goes into it. Whenever Jesus talks about hell in the Hebrew text, he says the fires of Gehenna, which that's more of a dump. And so there's a lot of debate as to whether Jesus actually meant you were going to hell or whether you were just going to live in a dump, right? In the book of Thomas, we say that Jesus says that if you don't know yourself, then you're impoverished and you live in poverty. And so it could just be for the fact that, the idea that that hell doesn't actually exist, which, technically I want to say the last pope of the Catholic Church was just like, yeah, hell is just more of a state of mind. But which hell being a state of mind is something that, to be frank, most likely Jesus would support. And if you look outside, it's not too hard to fathom, right?
Do with control. We have this device called hell that if you want to stay out of it, you better do what we tell you. It's manipulation. And Joshua would be, he would be railing against those people who are shaming others to make themselves feel pure. I am so much holier than you. He would rail against that. You're not worthy. Messaging is denying your own oneness with God. The Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. I mean, we're all one. He never spoke of starting a war with Rome. He spoke of love and compassion, and he used it to replace the doctrine of warfare that was being spread by Rome and even by the Jewish authorities. He would rail against the obsession with control over compassion. These are things that he would talk against. These are things that he would talk down, that he would replace with love and compassion. But
which kind of begs the question, why the Roman Catholic Church, right? If Rome clearly didn't agree with Jesus and Rome saw Jesus as a threat and all, big problem, all this kind of stuff, why the dramatic change? Why all of a sudden is the Roman Empire a Catholic, a Jesus following Catholic thing, right? I'm not going to get into that in this video, but there's a lot of history saying that, supposedly they, Jesus was causing a lot of unrest, and they were like, okay, well, you know what? Why don't we just, instead of trying to put out a fire that's spreading quickly, why don't we control the fire? In which case, we'll just choose what we decide once, we're going to have inside of this Bible. You create your Bible, you create a method of control, you have everybody scared of hell, you convince everybody that they have a single life, and that whatever they do in this single life, they're going to be, they're going to go to hell if they got it wrong. And so with that fear of hell lingering over your head, which is a generational fear, then how are you going to break away from that? It's incredibly difficult. So
what would he restore? What would he would bring back to us? He would bring back to us our own inner authority, because he talks about it in the scriptures themselves. Ye are gods, greater works than I have done, you will do. It is your faith that heals you. It's all about your inner authority. He would bring you back to the present moment. Don't worry about what Abraham said. Don't worry about apocalyptic visions of the world, but be here, be now. Think not upon tomorrow, be here today. The concept of loving your neighbor without conditions, just love them. No matter how much of a butthead they can be sometimes, just simply love them. Understand that their being a butthead is their fear being manifest, and you don't have to succumb to their fear. And that forgiveness that you give them, it frees you. And the forgiveness you give yourself frees you as well. You don't need a confession to somebody else who's going to shame you and tell you these are the things you have to do to possibly make it into heaven. And that heaven is a kingdom within. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And you don't need the permission from the priest to get there. You don't need permission and 4 Hail Marys and a walk in the park. What you need is your own release. The Buddha talked about the release of attachment, but the attachment is giving yourself the ability to be fully here and not anchored to past experience. There's two quotes in the Bible. You must become as a child to enter the kingdom of heaven, and you must be born again. In both of those circumstances, they have let the past go, because there is no past behind you when you're a child.
So, being born again, I do want to talk about this just a touch because I think this is something that, certainly something that I've gone through, but something that is incredibly misunderstood because in the Bible or in Christianity, being born again is accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. He died on the cross for your sins, and all of a sudden you're good to go. You're stamped your ticket into heaven. Now feel free to go out and do whatever you want. And so you see a bunch of Christians who run around. They still do the same things. They still drink the same things. They still, treat everybody the same way that they're treating everybody. They're still bearing bad fruit, but they're wearing the Christian title, right? And so obviously there's a lot of sects of Christianity that are going to disagree with them and tell them that they're still going to hell. Even though in the Bible it clearly says that all you have to do is believe and confess that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that He died on the cross for your sins, and you'll go to heaven. So yeah, but the idea of being born again is been quite dramatic, and the reason why I say it's completely it's completely misinterpreted is because whenever I started walking down my specific path, which was towards the ideas of Jesus that we're all connected, that we're all one sons of the living Father, all this kind of stuff, right? This idea of the desert spring, that we all come from the same space, we all have access to the same thing, we're all connected through this kind of confusing thing that we call whatever the hell we call it because we don't quite understand it, especially scientifically. But there is this thing that we all can connect to. And, personally, I think that whatever it is significantly more neutral than we make it out to be. The reason why is because a lot of people say that, well, I'm not going to say a lot of people say, but from my perspective of things, the reason why I think it's more neutral is because you have people who have these, you have Christians who throw out curses at people, right? You have Christians who are begging God that God breaks this person so that this person comes back to church. You have people begging God to, do this thing, take this from them, take that. May they feel so completely, horrible in their sin that they come back to God, all this kind of stuff. And sometimes you actually see that taking place, right? Now, it could just be because whenever a person walked away from their religion, they found themselves away from all the community that they had, and they struggled with making healthy community outside of religion. Because that is a thing. Finding healthy community outside of religion can be incredibly difficult. And so, but the idea of being born again is not the idea of accepting Jesus Christ into your heart, all this kind of stuff. That comes from Paul, right? The idea of being born again is the idea of waking up to who we are, right? If you look at what Jesus teaches, right, the kingdom of heaven, waking up to the kingdom of heaven that is already within you, versus trying to find the kingdom of heaven through a religion, right? He says in the book of Thomas that if you say that the kingdom of heaven is in the sky, the birds precede you. If you say that the kingdom of heaven is in the ocean, the fish will precede you. I say that the kingdom of heaven is inside of you and outside of you, which means that the kingdom of heaven is already here. It's already at hand, and it has been here. It has been at hand, but we just don't see it. And so being born again is kind of waking up to the fact that that is already a reality. So how do you get there? How do you get to the born again, right? The way I like to think of being born again is in completely altering your perception, completely altering your beliefs. Very quickly, whenever I left Christianity, the first thing that I had kind of gravitated towards was kind of studying a lot of the near-death experiences and things like that. You guys have seen that, and you see kind of this thread that God is just love and that is it, right? I personally, I think that you get what you focus on in God. If you carry the belief that this world is crooked and cruel and horrible, then that's all that you'll see in your perception of reality. Whenever I was walking away from Christianity, I started to accept the idea that this world was a beautiful place and that people in general are beautiful and that I'm in love with myself. I'm in love with this world. I'm in love with people. I'm in love with everything. And I'm loving this experience. And I went with my brother to Spain. And my brother does not live in the world that I live in. We live in two completely separate worlds, even though we walk on the same plane. Well, what ended up happening is everywhere that we went in Spain, I had an amazing time and I connected with people, and it was just such a beautiful thing for me. From my brother's perspective, all I heard was, could you believe that? Did you see what that guy said? Could you see this? And it was just like, it was crazy to see how we were both walking on the same planet, walking in the exact same spaces, having a completely different experience just by the energy that we're bringing to the table. I went to a coffee shop, and in Spain, nothing opens early. And so I'm walking around at 8 o'clock in the morning looking for a coffee shop. You know, in general, coffee shops don't open in Spain till like 10 o'clock in the morning. I love the idea of Europe. It's just like wake up when you wake up and go to work when you go to work. And yeah, at the clock, if you're 10 minutes late, it's not that big of a deal. That is amazing. I love that. But no, so I found this coffee shop. They were just opening up. And so I stood there in line, and they were still getting everything in line. There was no line. I was the only person inside the store, but they were still getting things ready. And it was very clearly past the opening time because the sign said that they were open at 8 o'clock, and I was there at like 8:05, 8:10, something like that. But I could see that everybody was still setting up, and so it didn't bother me. I was just enjoying myself, enjoying being there in the place and looking at the menu, trying to decide what I wanted to get. I ended up ordering. The guy gave me my food. I sat down and I was just having an amazing day. Just really appreciating the little cake in front of me, the little latte in front of me, just taking in being in Spain, sitting down at this coffee shop with this beautiful person, making me my cup of joe and everything like that. And I'm getting ready for the day. I'm just getting ready to have an amazing day. My brother walks into the coffee shop maybe 15 minutes later. I've almost finished my cake and I'm almost ready to walk out, but my brother just walked in, so I'm going to stick around a little bit longer. My brother walks there and he stands at the front and he's waiting for somebody to come take his order. Now, I stood at the front for maybe 10 minutes, something like that. It didn't bother me. I just wasn't there. I was, in my mind, I was looking at the menu. I was enjoying the day. I was enjoying life, enjoying me. And after about 2 to 3 minutes, my brother looks over at me and he's just like, "Oh my God, the service." And I'm just like, "What's wrong with the service? I thought it was great." When in Rome, not Rome. We got carjacked in Rome. Well, not carjacked, but we got robbed in Rome. Rome's no fun. But he was just like, "Oh my God, this service is just ridiculous." And I'm just like, I didn't think the service was that bad. I actually enjoyed it. I thought the guy was an amazing guy. And so my brother, he starts kind of like, "Hey, can somebody come over here?" And I immediately see in the waiter, I immediately see his change in energy of like, "Oh, look at this impatient guy. Wow, look at this guy. Oh, we're about to make his day difficult, right?" And so intentionally, I kind of see the waiter make my brother's day difficult. He gets his order wrong. All of the issues that my brother has with the waiter, I didn't experience them at all. I found the process to be rather flawless and seamless. And at the end, the waiter puts his order on the rack and goes and works on everybody else's order, and including gives other people who came in after my brother, gave them their food before giving my brother his food. He was having a horrible day, just a horrible day. And the entire time my brother's just steaming. "Oh my God, these people in Europe just don't work," all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is comical," right? And so anyways, so we leave down. So later we fly to Ibiza, and I forget exactly what was happening. We were walking back from our hotel room. I want to say that we were just kind of walking around the beaches in Ibiza. And we're walking back to our hotel room, and I'm just enjoying the day, and I'm not trying to walk too fast because I'm not in a hurry. We're on vacation, you know. And we turn a corner, and my brother slams into a guy, just absolutely slams into a guy, doesn't turn to acknowledge him, doesn't turn to say I'm sorry, doesn't, just slams into him and just keeps on walking. He's walking like he's in New York, right? And I turned to the guy and I stopped for a little bit, and I'm like, look, I apologize. That's my brother. He's just kind of, you know, he's a tough cookie, right? And I keep walking, and you know, the entire time I'm just listening to my brother talking about these people, these people, these people, these people, and I'm just like, dude, you do not see yourself. You know, people see him, and they change the way that they treat him because of the way that he's treating them. That is how this world works. If you don't like the way you're being treated, look at the way you treat others, right? And so yeah, you know, in my process of being reborn, which you know, it's a very very long and complicated conversation, so I'll save that for another day. But it is something that, you know, when you completely change your perspective, the way that you interact with people, the way that you see people, the way that you see yourself, it really is a rebirth. A rebirth. It is a complete 180 from who it was that you are to who you are now. It's dramatic. And that's why I tell people all the time. It's like, now that I am not Christian and I've gone on my own path, I've gone on my own spiritual journey, in a way, I'm more Christian now than I've ever been. Why? Because I've been, you know, I wouldn't say that I was completely in the teachings of Jesus and all that kind of stuff, because to be frank, when I walked away from the church, I walked away from Jesus. And I just recently came back around on the guy, you know, maybe a year ago or something like that. But anyways, back to the video. Enough of me talking.
And when you're born again, you're a child again, which means you've left the past behind. And so don't worry about what's behind you. Be in the true I am moment. I am that I am. So what is the real gospel? And I don't mean the religious propaganda. The real gospel is that you are loved, that you're not abandoned, and God is not a threat. Love is the only doctrine that really matters. And when you live into love, when you be the love, you'll see the love. When you be the love, you'll see the love. Because love itself is God, according to the book of John. God is love. And when you are being loving, you are being one with God. You are delivering God to the world. So how do we follow these teachings of Jeshua without being controlled? Well, the first thing you do is you stop obeying fear, because fear is the tool of the indoctrinations of the theologies. Stop calling shame humility. You know, you don't shame yourself, because the shame itself is just saying, I look bad in someone else's eyes. That's what shame is. It's wanting validation of that you're good, but you feel shameful because you don't think you will be good. You stop mistaking guilt for holiness, and you become love in your daily life. You start being love. You start being compassion. You start showing the world love itself, delivering God unto the world. Jeshua's message was one that could free you, not manage you.
So I do want to say this on shame. I think that first of all, Christianity uses your shame to control you. If they can convince you that something is incredibly wrong and shameful and you should never speak of it, then that's quite an easy way to psychologically control a person, right? Um, what I found, and in the process that I typically recommend for people, is to sit with what they consider shameful and ask themselves, is it really shameful, right? I can think of a lot of the things, and I've done a lot of things. Look, I'm not a saint. I don't want to even perceive, you know, throw off the idea that I'm a perfect person. I am far from it. But one of the things that I have been good at is going deep into my mind, and this is personally how I think that you can, you know, connect with God, is just by shutting your eyes and connecting with the energy that's already inside of you, right? You connect with that and you look at all of your mistakes. You look at the darkest things, your darkest thoughts, your biggest regrets, the things about yourself that you hate the most, the things, and you look at those things and you sit with those things And when you sit with those things, you bring them to the forefront of your mind, and you forgive yourself, and you love yourself anyway, and you show compassion on yourself. I grew up with a really dark childhood. I was suicidal by the time I was 10 years old, and I'm not going to sugarcoat things. But by the time I was 8 years old, I already wanted to kill my family, because that is how much I hated them, because how mean they were to me. I don't want to get into how mean they were to me, but it's just, you know, and so for the longest time, I looked at the fact that I hated my family so much that I wanted to kill them as something wrong with me, right? It wasn't something wrong with me. It was a reaction. It was a reaction to how I was being treated, right? And I took away the idea that that was bad. I took away the idea that my reaction to the way I was treating, the reactive thoughts that I had, the dark thoughts that I had, I took away the idea that they were bad. And I simply gave them compassion. And I looked at myself, this is all with my eyes closed, and connecting to God inside of me. And I say to the little kid, I say, look, I know you went through a bunch of shit, and I know you had these thoughts, but I love you anyway. And I know you're going to go through more shit, and I love you anyway. And I just want to let you know that I forgive you, and I don't judge you for any of those thoughts that you had. I don't judge you for any of the things that you did. I love you completely. I love you as you are, and I'm sorry that you're experiencing what you're experiencing, but I love you anyways. And full stop. You will be surprised how that process will completely change your life. How just sit with your darkest thoughts, sit with the worst things you've ever thought of, the darkness that's inside of you. Sit with that, right? You hate your wife, you whatever. Sit with it and show yourself compassion. Forgive yourself for it and move forward with your life, and let go of it, right? Don't hold on to it. And what you'll find is the more things that you let go of, the more things that you go into your darkness and you show that love and you show that acceptance, right? Now, just because you love and accept the part of yourself, or you completely shown, you opened up the dark closets and you shine a flashlight inside of it, just because they do that doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything that you do is okay, right? All the things that are in the dark are okay. That doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that you're willing to love yourself through that. And you'll be surprised that when you start to accept yourself completely and love yourself completely, you'll be surprised how easy it is to extend that love to everything else, right? There's this idea that, men are the only things that can give unconditional love. Well, that's just not true. Why? Because men don't unconditionally love themselves. So how can you give something that you don't have? You can't give from an empty cup. If I have a cup and I have nothing inside of it, and you walk up to me and ask for coffee, I can't say, yeah, sure, I'll give you some of my coffee. I don't have coffee in my cup, right? If I don't have complete love for myself, how do you expect to get complete love from me? I don't even love myself, right? If I don't accept myself fully, how do you expect me to accept you, right? If I don't have fighting thoughts within myself, how do you expect me to not fight with your thoughts, right? The level that you are, you can only meet a person where you're at, right? If you think, I've got a bunch of notifications going off here, and that's fine. But if you really think that you are at a level down here, but somehow you are capable of loving a person like up here, it's impossible. You are not there for yourself yet, You can't rise to the occasion until you've risen first. That doesn't make any sense, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. All right, let's finish out this video.
And if religion made you smaller, you're to be compliant and fearful, and they're using guilt-based morality to keep you there. Modern religion became the opposite of the liberation. So how do you follow? It's wanting validation of that you're good, but you feel shameful because you don't think you will be good. You stop mistaking guilt for holiness. And you become love in your daily life. You start being love. You start being compassion. You start showing the world love itself, delivering God unto the world. Joshua's message was one that could free you, not manage you. And if religion made you smaller, you're allowed to leave it. And when people left the church and they were asked what they found freedom. And if you want to go to your own freedom, there's a link right below this video that will take you to some options to go to the next level.
Okay. If you'd like to find that out, you can go over to his channel. It's called The Recovering Catholic. He points out a lot of the things. He exists in the realm of Jesus' teachings don't align with the church. He exists in that realm. Aaron Abke exists in that realm. There's a few other people who kind of do that. Me, I just try to focus on helping a person transition out of Christianity, because I know it is incredibly scary, and the fear of hell is something that is very deeply ingrained, generationally deeply ingrained into our psyche and into our DNA. And it's something that we have to move through. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. And also, if you want to be a part of the show, thedesertspring111@gmail.com, please reach out to me. We're interested in talking about your deconstruction story, or if you know anybody who has had a deconstruction and they've had quite the process, or they grew up in a really, really rough situation due to Christianity, please, we'd love to speak with you and have you on the show. We've had other interviews. Feel free to go and look at those. And so thank you, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.